Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nosa Capital coming to you on a rather cool afternoon from the Southern Hemisphere. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware of the tremendous geopolitical and geoeconomic action going on and how it's affecting the entire markets. I expect this thing to go on for a little while. I don't expect things to calm down immediately. Eventually, I believe that the United States and China would, speak to each other. How and when, we don't know. Recent capitulation by President Trump in terms of removing tariffs on electronic goods, I think could, some people actually, yours truly included, and I think it was rather mistaken on my part to think that, okay, maybe the Chinese might want to talk about, the Chinese have decided to just double down and say, okay, you want to fight this war, we're going to fight this war. Regardless of what people might say, eventually they will sit down and they will have a chat. There's no question about that. Business cannot continue in this manner. We also know, excuse me, we also know that there has been increasing talk on matters, Bitcoin reserves, and that's for the countries. Even the Chinese are now beginning to look at their Bitcoin reserves. There's also talk about, strategies in terms of increasing their Bitcoin reserves. I'm talking about now the United States here in this matter, where some are positing that they could use the money made from tariffs to sort of make, get the money that they need to buy Bitcoin, which they can use to build up the reserves. I'm not going to even go into it in too much detail, but Michael Saylor himself also talked about getting a Bitcoin reserve and using that to literally neutralize the debt that the United States own and then have a kind of dominance. I see that they're only looking at one side of the picture. I don't think the dominance that the United States holds today will hold in another, this is 2025, another 10 years. I doubt that very much. It's not going to disappear overnight, but I doubt that very much. And that's not making any disparaging comments against the United States, far from it. I want to see a strong United States. I want to see a healthy United States. I want to see a prosperous United States, because obviously it's good for everybody. And as a country that understands business, one would hope that they would continue down this line. But anyway, we're here from Rough and Ready Crypto Analysis, as you well know, rough and ready, not in detail. Not financial advice, of course. So let's start. Let's get started here. Okay, so we have Bitcoin. Now, by now, this, for those of you who are regular viewers, this, you should be very familiar with this. And we've taken, first of all, let's start with the Fibonacci. And the Fibonacci indicates areas of support. And this is one major area here, which is about 74,000 area here, big area of support. We can see that down here, right here, we've got two areas of demand, which are buying areas. That's in the blue here. And these maroon areas here are areas of supply, which is where people sell. So it means that you can actually come up with a strategy where you buy here and sell here. I mean, you've heard me say that before. Another thing that you've heard me say before is that until the price action gets out of this region here, we are not necessarily going to have a nice time of it. We're going to continue to get this sideways volatile trading. There's no question about that. And until we get out of this area, it's not going to stop. So the earlier we get out of that area, the better, but I don't see that happening. Now, there are many that have posited that things are going to turn around. For instance, they're looking at the global M2 and how the price of Bitcoin will end up catching up with the global M2. We shall see about that as time goes on. The situation also that some are also positing that we're going to get to about 110, 112 and all that. I wouldn't necessarily start saying all that kind of stuff until I begin to see the price action moving in that direction. And even then, I'm going to watch with caution, because remember, we've got 1, 2, 3 areas of supply. And it takes a lot of effort to break through these areas of supply. You've seen this yourself. So until that time, I wouldn't put too much stock on all that talk. So let's look at, let's go back to what we did the other time. Let's look at the Ichimoku cloud. Some people had complained to me that I didn't do Ichimoku last time, so let's just remove the, and here's the Ichimoku price action. Everything is still under the cloud. Kenji-sen above the Tenkan-sen. Chikou-span has got itself caught up in between the price action, as you can see here, which means that, and as long as Chikou-span is caught up within this price action area here, as I've always said to you before, and I'll continue to say to you, you're not going to get much change in the price. And then, of course, everything is under the cloud, which is definitely bearish. And of course, you can see that the cloud here is also a cloud at an angle. So this is definitely bearish. I expect to see the price continue to trade sideways. Expect that a good buying price at the moment is anything below 90,000. Let's just leave it at that. I think 90,000 is a very good way of saying, okay, if you are buying under 90,000, you can still make a very good profit. I think earlier in the year, I posted about 130,000. That hasn't really changed. Although when I did the measurements in one of the videos, I think it was about 125,000. So I just put that $5,000 on top of it for luck, and let's see what happens with that. So anyway, there's no such thing as luck in this business, but hey, we can always dream. Okay. Let's move on to Ethereum. Oh, sorry. Let's just do Ethereum and then we'll come back to the other one. Let's do Ethereum now. I wanted to do Binance, but maybe we should even just ignore this Binance thing. Let's just do Ethereum. As you can see, Ethereum not looking too good. It's a series of lower highs and lower lows, and that theme hasn't stopped. It's just continuing, looking almost like no hope. The Ethereum team didn't exactly engender confidence because they were talking about the changes. The earliest any of the major changes they were talking about is 2029. Now, this is 2025. By 2029, ladies and gentlemen, you can just imagine the technology. Hey, maybe Bitcoin might not even be the hot thing. Hell, Solana might have been surpassed. Who knows? And if that happens, the likes of Ethereum, we know that stuff is definitely going to disappear, regardless of the number of DeFi projects that they may have built on Ethereum. Because one has to remember, 5 years in crypto is like a million years. I mean, it's just so rapid and so fast, and we really have to consider that before we start making this type of judgment. At the moment, Ethereum is not looking too good. People will still hold on to some Ethereum. I've got some Ethereum, like I told you before. I've already passed on a lot of it to Solana. I've bridged quite a bit of it. Let's just see what we can gain with this. Not too good. Let's go from the high to the low, and let's see what our look at some areas of resistance, which is about here at 3,525. There is some confluence here between the 0.236 and this sell supply area here. As you can see, there's actually no demand area in sight. It's just 1, 2, 3, 5 areas of supply. This tells you that there's just massive sales going on, and you can see at these areas, you can see on the volume profile that it shows you that a lot of volume activity is going on, and you can see, just look at that. Look at these areas here. This tells you. Now, if you're somebody just buying Ethereum, you might buy some just for some speculation. Some of us are holding on to Ethereum with the strong belief that it will recover. I'm not quite sure how far it will recover. I'm not quite sure. And I definitely wouldn't recommend anybody buying any Ethereum. I would tell you to go and buy something else instead of buying Ethereum. That I certainly wouldn't tell you to buy any Ethereum at this time. Let's look at the Ichimoku very quickly. I mean, just look at that. Look at our cloud inclined. Kensington above our Tenkan-sen. Look at that Chiku span running free, not held up by anything. Price action here, lower highs and lower lows, and this trading sideways a bit, and I suppose it will probably even go down even lower. And this is definitely bearish. Would I recommend anyone to buy, particularly if you've never bought any Ethereum and you don't have any? No, I would rather tell you, again, no financial advice, but I would sooner say, look, why don't you go buy some Sui or some Solana instead? But it's your money and you're going to do what you believe is right for you. So let's move on. I was going to do Binance. I'm not going to do Binance. Not much to talk about there. Let's go on to Solana. Let's just jump on for Solana today. Now, this is where things are a bit different, as I've always said. Now, look at Solana here, ladies and gentlemen. Series of lower highs and lower lows, of course. But, this is the big but. Look at the amount of buying going on. Look at the amount of development, I beg your pardon, going on in Solana. I mean, it's massive. We've had reports of some other chains moving their stuff over onto Solana. There's increased presence of stablecoin in the billions. I mean, some of the latest stablecoin mints have taken place on Solana. Super fast, super efficient, and Fire Dancer will come very soon, maybe by the end of this quarter. And Bob's your uncle. We're going to have. I strongly believe that Solana is undervalued. It's undervalued. Has been oversold and is undervalued. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got an overlap of 2 areas of supply, and there's no areas of demand. I had posited that anything under 130 would be a very good buy, and then as a time I said anything under 120 would be a good buy. I still maintain anything under 130. I still maintain that. I suspect that the current price, which is at about 133.55, it will. I suspect it might fall a little bit more. There's always a chance for it to come down to this area here. I mean, for those of you who managed to get in here at about 95, blessed be the child. You've done extremely well. My last major buy was at about 110. When it got there, I mean, it kept going to 112, 120, and it went back up to 100. Then eventually dropped to 110. But after a series of tries, so I was quite happy about that. It's currently 133.39. Definitely still a very, very good buy. I would always recommend this. Again, no financial advice, but if asked to recommend, this is what I would recommend. And okay, look at that. Our cloud is at an angle, inclined angle. Kensington above the Tenkan-sen. Price action trading sideways, but all under the cloud. Now, our Chiku span here is caught up within the cloud, which means that this acts almost like an area of resistance because it's from the bottom up. Remember, if the Chiku span is coming from the top into it, then that starts acting as an area of support. That means that the price starts acting as if it's an area of support. But this is an area of resistance at the moment. I don't expect to see any dramatic changes in price for a day or so, or maybe even less, except something dramatic happens at least sometime later today. Definitely bearish, but anything, if you can get something under 130, 120, between 120 and 130, or between, let's say, 110 and 130, God bless the child. I think that's a very good buy. And as I've said before, I'll conclude by telling you that this is definitely oversold and undervalued. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, and our next one is definitely Sui. Another sad-looking chart, of course. Series of lower highs and lower lows. A small area of demand, which is way down here which is something between 74 and about 83 cents. The chance of it falling down to this area is very low. Current price is about $2.09. I don't expect it. I think this area here, let's look at this. I think this is an area This area here would be about as far as low as it might come. Let's try something. This is where the price really took off, so let's take it from here to this area. Yeah, let's add, okay, let's just put on the 1 just for this moment. Let's see what the 1 gives us. Okay, there we are. You can see that. What did I say? Look at that 1. There's confluence between the line I drew and this one at $1.60. So I can't see it falling anywhere below that. Our volume profile is fairly even, so don't expect any dramatic, sudden and dramatic changes in price. I think you're going to get a gradual price going up or decreasing, but it's going to be gradual. It's not going to be rapid. And then let's see. Look, this is another platform that is developing very well. A lot of work is going on. They've just, I think Walrus. I think it's called Walrus. You have to correct me on that one. Walrus is something new that's just come on there, and it's got a bit of hype. Looks like it's going to be of great utility. I don't know enough to talk about it, but what I can tell you is that SUI is also oversold and undervalued. Remember I said anything under about, I think it was about 230. If you can get anything even under the $2, if you can get something under $2, you're doing very well. I think this is also something you should accumulate. Again, no financial advice, but it's something that you should accumulate. And this is some of the types of networks that I would advise people to buy, and not necessarily all this other stuff that keeps coming up. You want solid assets that have utility, and that's where you should be at all times. Let's take the Fibonacci off. Again, you can see the cloud is an incline. Kenjin Sen, that's the orange, is above the Tenkan Sen. Chiku span is running free. Price trading sideways, a bit volatile, but to the sideways. Everything under the cloud, definitely bearish. My recommendation here is that you can still get something under $2. God bless the child. You're doing very well if you can do that. Okay. So, out of respect for some, I will still, let's look at Moodeng. And I've just been repeating myself on this one. This is just absolutely dreadful. We're not going to do any major, and there's no analysis to be done here. If I I mean, you've seen the previous charts, you know what I was about to say. Lower highs and lower lows. Look at that. Look at the Ichimoku. Look at that. Look at the clouds. Kinjis know of the Tenkan Sen. Chiku span running free. Everything's below the cloud. In my opinion, this becomes a speculative asset. If you can buy cheaply here, somewhere down here, and sell at this areas of supply, you'll be doing very well. Long-term holders, you've heard me say this a billion times, you've got a long wait. So that's really about Moodeng. There's nothing to say. I mean, you want to hear something more detailed, listen to previous videos of the Rough and Ready, and you hear everything I've said about Moodeng. Let's go to, okay, no, I was going to go to Pi, but let's go to WIF. Now, for those of you, if you haven't, I've released a short on Pi, which tells you everything you need to know about Pi, so you can watch that. I'll probably put it in some of the information cards so that you can click on it and get to it directly. Anyway, just the same as we had in with Moodeng, no area of demand. It's all areas of supply. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's even an overlap between these two, which makes it even more difficult. If the prices were to start going up, it's going to get more difficult, because remember, these zones, price has to travel through. That means you need enough momentum. And if they are selling or buying zones, your momentum will ultimately affect what price you eventually get. And that's what we're seeing here. As we can see, the volume profile is fairly even until about this area here. And it's going to be a while before we see prices go through this area. This is something between 79 and about $1.51. And it's going to be a while before we see those type of prices again. in terms of for width. Let's just throw on now Ichimoku. Not much to say here. It's the same thing as we saw with Moodeng. Cloud at an incline here, as we can see. Kenji-sen above the Tenkan-sen. Chikou span is running free. Price action, lower highs to lower lows, and now it's literally flat. Everything under the cloud. Maybe if you buy something at about 30 cents, if you get something that's about 30 cents or under 30 cents and you want to be speculative about it, you can then wait for it to go up. Maybe sell at about between 62 and 78, something like that, and make your profits. If you're a long-term holder of WIF, you've got a long while to go. I can't see this. This is looking more and more forlorn, but we just have to be very patient. Very patient. If I remove let me just take out the Ichimoku. If you're going to get in, you probably get in around here at about 57. If it's going back up, to be sure that it's going to keep going back up. But even then, you've got this area of supply here, which is between 63 and 79. That area here, you've got to get through this area as well before you can begin to see any reasonable profits. So look, keep an eye out if it's something you want to do, and then you will see how far you can take it or speculate. Anyway, something that if you don't find it too rich for your blood, then that's something you can do. Okay, I think that's really it. As I said, Rough and Ready is a very quick one today. Keep an eye out for the geoeconomic and geopolitical situation out there. Whatever machinations go on in those arenas is going to affect the markets in general, not just the crypto market, but also the stock markets. We've also seen recently what's happened with the bond market, and one of the reasons why President Trump had to back down, because of how it affected the bond yields. So that's something you have to watch out for. Learn to use these areas to speculate and get in and out to make some profit wherever you can. Anyway, that's me. So keep your eyes and ears open and your trading sharp. Have a good one. Bye.